Welcome to Go to Market, a podcast for RevOps, sales, and marketing leaders to dive deep into industry insights and best practices. Go to Market is sponsored by Fullcast and Silicon Slopes. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Olivier Roth, co-founder and chief growth officer at The Swarm. Olivier, how are you?
Great, great. Thank you for having me, Amy.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I've heard so much about Swarm, and it is just a true delight for me to learn more from the co-founder. So thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, first of all, give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I've been in startups for the last, I would say like 10, 15 years. Originally from France, I moved to US 15 years ago, and San Francisco really saw a lot of my friends like actually being entrepreneurs, freelancers and whatnot in the city. And I just really like caught on to that, starting my own agency, hired like designers, video producers, website developers, and grew like bootstrapped that company, grew it for a few years. And that's how I met my co-founder David now, who's a CEO at the Swarm. And that was like 5 years ago that I switched to the Swarm. And I can tell you a bit more about that, of course, but
Absolutely.
that's the big arc here, big picture.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, so how do you like the US and how do you like San Francisco?
Yeah, I moved to Denver for a few years after living in San Francisco to try Colorado, which I really loved in many ways. But the Bay Area just called me back, and I'm for the last year we've been in Sonoma County, north of SF, so I can kind of combine like wine country and being able to go to the city to meet investors, customers, going to conferences and like that. And I love it. I just love, I wouldn't leave anywhere else. I just like,
The Bay
I just
Area
love it.
is absolutely gorgeous. So I live in Southern California, and
Mhm.
it's such a quick flight to go up to the Bay Area. I can just do it in a day, there and back, and I love it up there. There's so much vibrancy, so many smart people in one place. It's crazy, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm kind of the same as you are in terms of, I live in Orange County, and it's an hour to LA or an hour to San Diego. So I just love where I live too, and where you're just like slightly removed, but you can get into the city anytime.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Check out the Santa Rosa airport is a hack if you live on the West Coast. Like you basically drop like 10 minutes from Healdsburg and so on. So skip SFO, go to Santa Rosa airport.
Okay. Thank you for that tip. That's a great tip. Wonderful. Well, I've been dying to learn about the swarm. Can you tell me more about it? How did it get started? What do you guys do? And, how can businesses benefit?
Yeah, so the big idea behind the swarm is that relationships are one of the most underutilized assets for a company. I mean, it's the oldest thing in business, right? It's like who you know and how to get referrals and warm introductions to your next customers. And it's been happening really sort of like organically in business for forever. The best salespeople already do that. Like, right, they have this Rolodex, they really keep track of who they know and so on. But there hasn't been like a software and a technology like built around it to scale it up. And that's what the origin idea of the swarm is like how can we like scale up this network around the company and not just like an individual or a team, but like what's the company's network?
Hmm.
Team members, the investors, the advisors, customers, partners, like in and around your company, there are all those people that are, somewhat interested in your success as a company, and they know a lot of people. And so, can we combine that network? Can we like sort of like reveal that like, that universe of like, relationships around your company and tap into it for growth? So we started initially, well, my CEO, David Connors, he was working at Sequoia Capital. And Sequoia Capital obviously is like an incredible like network. I mean, the top VC firm in the world has a very strong network. And so they were developing like data tools for portfolio companies to sort of like, cross-pollinate the network. So that's kind of like the origin idea, a bit of a spin-off of that. And that was like 5 years ago. We started we started building the technology, hired Miha, who was our CTO, and then, the development team to put the foundations together, and it's been 5 years working on this problem, and it's been really exciting.
Oh, I think that is very exciting. So, can you tell me a little bit about how it works? Like, I'm coming in as a new customer. I want to best utilize the technology. What does it do for me?
Yeah, so everybody thinks LinkedIn. Like if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking like LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn already gives me like the network of my network, and I can see 3 degree of connection. So I mention it now because that's what comes to mind. And it's sort of like we think of it as like the legacy, like, option. And you can pay for a LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which if you give that to all of your salespeople can be super expensive because you pay per seat, obviously. And LinkedIn Sales Nav will like let you search through like for, mutual connections to a target person, let's say. The problem with LinkedIn alone is that there's no context on the connection on LinkedIn. And people know from our experience doing this for the last 5 years, they only know 5-10% of their LinkedIn connections well enough to make an intro. Like if you find a mutual connection to a person, you sometimes you can find like hundreds of them. First of all, you have to sift through, and then you make the ask, and that's like the answer is I don't know that person well enough. Obviously, LinkedIn also, there's no integration. You can't get the data out of LinkedIn. You can maybe export in CSV, or you can scrape it if you if you want, but like there is no integrations, there is no API like that's like available for revenue teams. So we kind of flip that model, and we built something that's integrated with your existing stack. So with your CRM, you can like see in HubSpot, in other CRMs, you can see like introductions. Your growth teams, if they use Clay, they can pull the data over onto Clay and stuff. So it works in your existing workflows. And then fundamentally, like the mapping that we do is different than LinkedIn. We take like all of those like people that are potentially giving you introductions, we call them connectors, and we map the former colleagues of your connectors. We have a database of 500 million people, so we can do that. We build an algorithm that maps like, who you worked with on and when, based on role similarities, based on experiences and whatnot. Same for schools, like you went to like the same college, the same year, in the same degree as someone else. There's another commonality here that we map. And then we have fundraising data, so we can see like companies that are the same investors. So if you're the same investor between company A and company B, you're gonna ask for an intro to the investor. And that's done like automatically when you sign up. You just like add your connectors. We actually find connectors for you automatically at first, and you can add more connectors. We map their network. And then if you invite people, they can also add LinkedIn and connect Gmail. So you see it's
Okay,
like there,
that's very cool. So you can sync in a whole bunch of different types of relationship networks into one.
right. It's really combining and then
Yeah.
scoring the relationships. So for example, if we worked to the same company at the same time for 3 years, and it was a small company, we were both like co-founders, that's a very strong relationship. If you were an intern at Google and I was the CEO at Google, there's no real relationship there. There's a very low score, and so on. So we do all of that like data crunching, and it's funny. I like to mention we use AI for like a lot of this stuff, or the models and engine behind it. And big picture, it's like using AI for human to human relationships, which I think is a great use case of AI. We're not like faking relationships, we're like showing the relationships that you want to know that you didn't know were there. And then you pick up the phone and you ask for intros and you make the connection and you go get coffee for lunch and stuff. It's
Yeah.
so just a sidebar on that like use of AI for humans.
Yes. So I have a question about this. So a lot
Mhm.
of people have said, all right, AI is taking over outbound. It's taking over
Mhm.
sales. But then at the same time, like the challenge that I've had is I use these quote unquote fancy, amazing AI tools, and then nobody ever responds. It just goes into your spam. And then Microsoft and Google, they've basically shut down automation into their boxes. So what's the right answer for sales? What's the clear answer for like how do we go to market today? How do we do sales?
Yeah, I think like you need to differentiate between like sort of like the good AI and the bad AI. I mean, like, AI generated like emails and cold outbound is a thing of the past already. I mean, most companies that are successful on the path to growth actually like don't lean on that stuff anymore. So I don't even need to say it's like cold emails alone are dead. But like there is obviously like you know, AI is a tool and there is obviously like a ton of like incredible use cases. I mean, for to use AI in your sales process, to do some account mapping and research ahead of calls and all that stuff is great. So that's my kind of nuanced view on AI, like, but the problem is like it creates an easy button to like send emails and create content and flood and create a ton of noise. And
Yeah.
that's just because it's possible, people do it and it happens and it's like flooding everyone's inbox. And yes, like Google and Apple are responding is like, kind of like preserving your experience as a user of their
Yeah.
platform and
That's
shutting
right,
down like
because
the bad.
so many people are saying, well, don't even do email. Email is dead. Some people
Yeah.
don't even check their inboxes anymore because it's so full of spam. And I think
Yeah.
that's so interesting. We actually did a benchmark report with $78 billion worth of opportunities that we have been working with. And it's our own data and our customers' data. And what we found was in our benchmark report this year, it's exactly what you were saying. There's good AI and there's bad AI. And the companies that used AI for efficiency soared. The companies that used AI for volume got
Mhm.
less revenue, much less revenue per seller. And so I love what you were saying there. And I find that very fascinating.
And there's also different types of sales, obviously. There's like enterprise sales where you sell a 10-figure contract. Obviously, this is where like the relationship mapping that makes so much sense. And then like even if you sell to like a mid-market deal, like even I don't know, down to like 10, 20K ACVs, like why not like looking at like a warm intro, and but then there's a ton of sales that happens like or product-led growth that's just like doesn't make sense necessarily for intros because you need volume and it's more going to be like advertising plays and so on. What what I found like in a conversation with like a Fortune 1000 companies, I can't name them fortunately like yet. They're pretty they're reluctant to that, but I'll tell the
Yeah.
story.
Uh-huh.
They are starting to they've seen the swarm data and they sell big major data centers deals, okay, and to other large companies. And so they loved this warm intro mapping the technology that we have. We deployed it for them for their target accounts and so on. And they're starting to rethink like account scoring. They use Marketo, and a lot of enterprise like use Marketo. Marketo is like feels for me at a startup, it's like really kind of old, like, but it's like enterprise like use Marketo and because of adoption cycles and whatnot. But like they're rethinking kind of like, okay, like if there is a relationship that should like really like increase the score in our way in the way we see like our accounts, target accounts and target people, like not just like, oh, this person went to the website and they went to this webinar and they were at the conference last year, but also there is a warm intro. So that's
Mhm.
really interesting to see, not just like the motion of like I'm gonna ask for an intro, but how it's also just beginning to maybe change the way we think of like who do we go after, how do we prioritize our go-to-market motions and whatnot.
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes so much sense. So, Olivier, like you've been in this business for a long time and you're clearly at the top of your game. You're experiencing incredible growth at the Swarm. My last question for you today is how do you stay at the top of your game?
So thanks for all the kind words. I think like in an early stage startup, it's really easy to lose track of like work-life balance, and I just like focus on that. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and my wife here in Santa Rosa in Sonoma, and I just like protect my time with them, and I'm lucky to live like in beautiful Sonoma County, and just like spend like time outdoors with them as much as possible. I mean, like at the end of the day, like there's so much to do in growth, in marketing, which I lead. There's unlimited work. You can do you can you can especially with AI now, I can just like have 15 things running at the same time in the background and just like protect my time with the family, spend as much time as possible with the kids. I work from home. That gives me that like flexibility to do that, and I just like of that. I wouldn't do it any other way.
I love that too, and I find the same thing. I work from home as well, and I have 5 children, and they are my sanity because otherwise, like, I kinda have a one-track business mind, and I love what I do, and I could spend 20 hours a day doing it, and my kids pull me out and make me a normal person, so it's great. Well, thank you, Olivier. Thank you so much for coming on the show. What a pleasure to
Thank
be able to
you.
meet you, and congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you so much, Amy. It was amazing talking to you. Thank you.